this music is coming at a certain level and this certain kind of perfect state-of-the-art sonic sounds with the bass and the high end going far distances, the way the speakers are splayed and the perfect technology that's being used at, say, the Resonance Festival at all the stages. That kind of music can really get inside of folks and make them all kind of like one blob of love moving together and breathing together as an organism. That's the only answer, really. I take celebrating and having fun extremely seriously, Cam. Understand that. That's why my shows are the way they are.
Keller Williams on the Weird Music Podcast. Keller, man, I'm super excited to see you at Resonance Music Festival coming up. I've had a really awesome time at past sets of yours at Resonance. And to start off, I want to talk about music festivals in general. How would you describe music festivals such as Resonance to people on the outside looking in who may really have no idea about it?
Definitely a lot of beautiful, hairy people, some of which have on very small amounts of clothing, yet long socks. Some folks have, big puppet heads. Other folks are just in jeans and a shirt. Some folks have dreadlocks. Some people have no hair at all. It's a very comfortable kind of utopian scene in a way, depending on how you look at it. You know, there's definitely lots of areas, the many sites that resonate, or the 3 sites that I've been on that Resonance has occupied. There's always been tons of shade and tons of beautiful people. Resonance is different in the fact that it's not just one kind of music. It's focused on electronic energy, and also actual bands playing instruments live. And it's very, that's not usually the norm. You know, usually there's a bluegrass festival concentrating on bluegrass. There's all electronic or like all, bands, country bands or whatever. But this one is very much a convergence of 2 very similar kinds of music, but played differently, So to me, it's kind of like the open-minded jam scene mixed in with the electronic scene. And it's no secret to me, or it's no secret to anybody that I am a huge electronic music fan and have been for many, many years. Sometimes it's completely different than the type of music I play. Other times there's a lot of influence from the DJ world and the electronic producers that enter into my world. But it's one of the few festivals that I hope that my hotel's close by so I can run around the site late at night where all the real magic happens. If you're into that type of thing, this festival's for you.
Oh, I love how you balance, humor and sincerity in your act, and it's so you. And I want to kind of talk about the balance of those 2 things. Like, I'd love to hear your take on how different elements like humor and sincerity, or I don't know, beautiful melodic sections versus more rhythmic dance sections, how they complement each other.
Well, as far as the humor goes, in songwriting for me, it's kind of where it begins is entertaining myself and making myself laugh. Hopefully it translates to the audience, but if it doesn't, at least I'm taking care of head, first. And it's impossible to please everybody. So that's where I start. As primarily a solo act, it's kind of what I call my day job, is my solo act. I definitely lean heavy on the dance side of it. Especially at Resonance, being that it's very influenced by the DJs and electronic producers and whatnot. And other festivals, that would have like more bluegrass, I would definitely have elements of the dance, but I would focus on more of a bluegrass thing as well. So it's, each festival, what I like to do is just kind of customize the set list for that. But I think for all the dance, groovy jives that you have, it's good to have like the beautiful ethereal kind of halftime thing in the middle. And that's one thing I've definitely learned from dance music as well. It's like the 140 BPM, drop down to, to 80, and the effect that has on a crowd, and or me especially. So that's kind of what I have to go on.
Keller, I want to jump in the time machine for a minute here. Like, I know you've spoken a lot of, in past interviews about, how you got into music on the piano, you're self-taught. But I want to kind of unravel, like, what does that really mean to be self-taught? Like, how did you teach yourself? And ultimately, do you think that's an advantage for you, the way you learned music?
I think it's definitely an advantage to where to be self-taught, you approach it completely different. The way I did it was I would just pick out melodies from the radio and then kind of add in low-end bass lines that would accompany it. And I definitely took piano lessons, but never learned how to read music. I played trombone in middle school, and I was in marching band like 8th and 9th grade. And never really learned how to read music, would always just like kind of play what the guy next to me is playing, because usually there's a couple trombones playing different parts, but usually there's two trombones playing this one part and two trombones playing this other part, and I would learn what the other dude's doing. But with that being said, I would wish that I had learned how to really read music to where like later on, so I could kind of put in my own idea of, but then I could sit down and just play something that I want to play that's all written in front of me. And I think the two of them are together would be, the best. But I definitely have relatives that only learned how to read music and are fantastic piano players, but can't really play anything that's not written. It's difficult to kind of go off book and to improvise. And I think that definitely hurts in the kind of music that I like. And so I think a little bit of both is important.
Yeah, with unstructured music, like improvised live music, that's what I love. And there's an inherent risk involved with it. It's definitely possible things could go wrong.
Absolutely.
What do you think that unstructured element adds to the music?
Well, it adds a sense of adventure. It adds a sense of mystery. If you're really listening to it, and you're following it, you're wondering where it's going to go, how it's going to come out. Is it going to come out? What's going to happen? It's kind of like a beautiful, it's like improvised music. Dave Schools once said this, it's like a conversation. You have to listen. And if you don't listen, then you can't really add anything. It's really a group effort to kind of like be on the same page and kind of listen and not just, doodle around. It's an adventure. Like I said, that's why I love it so much.
So like uniquely with you doing that solo, like I guess you're listening to your really recently past self with the looper. Like, can you kind of describe what that mindset, like the dynamic is when you're doing the solo improvisation? And like, do you ever find yourself getting stuck, and like how do you get into the right groove of that?
Well, improvising solo is mainly lyrical. Now, when I'm looping and I set up a jam and a loop, the older I get, the more focused I get on creating this beat and this bass line that goes together. And then once that beat and bass line is together, then the soloing and the lyrical stuff can be improvised. But I definitely focus on what's going to be repeated over and over. And I focus on getting that like tight and sexy with a bass line and a kick drum lining up together with the drums not too busy to where it won't distract you from what's happening. It lays down the foundation. I focus on that. So then after that foundation is laid down, then I can just kind of go anywhere with my solos or rhythm playing or effect sounds with my guitar synthesizer that I can get, oboes and helicopters and aliens and, all kinds of keyboards and synthesizers and whatnot. And that's when the improvisation really kind of kicks in, especially lyrical. Just all of a sudden you see something and then I start singing about it. And then just all of a sudden it starts to flow. And lately my improvisation has been popping lyrically. And I've been enjoying that aspect of sometimes absurdity, but like the the crowd at Resonance Festival is definitely open-minded enough to understand what's happening and that this isn't scripted. And I think that they get it. That's why I love Resonance Festival so much.
The crowd's awesome. I'll be in it. I'll be in it. Nipples will be free. Keller, you keep things light. I love the freeness you carry yourself with. And, with that being said, though.
Free nipples. Free the nipples, Cam. Free the nipples.
Amen. Amen.
Free the nipples and your belly will follow,
You keep things free. You keep things especially light. But, you can still take listeners to that amazing place of like, I don't even want to put a name on it. The way you do it is so uniquely, like, I guess we'll just use the word free. It's uniquely creative. It's uniquely Keller. From a veteran like yourself, would you say there's certain principles to live by or good pieces of advice to just life in general that are embodied in your approach to music?
Yes. All the music I play on stage, I do it for absolutely no charge, completely free of charge. And everything I get paid for is the travel and the being away from the family and dealing with the 22 and a half hours a day that I'm not on stage. So by traveling so much, my advice is, and this is important, why my shows are the way they are, I always expect every flight to cancel and all my gear never to show up. And if it does, it's all going to be broken. And I expect that. So when and if that does happen, I expect it and I go with it. Now, when it doesn't happen and everything shows up and everything works, it's a complete celebration. So every show that I make that is everything showed up and it's working, I'm celebrating, and I have a reason to celebrate because all this stuff shouldn't have showed up unbroken. And so set the bar low, and when you exceed the bar, really celebrate and realize that it could have been a lot worse. So I take celebrating and having fun extremely seriously, Cam. Understand that. That's why my shows are the way they are.
I love it. I love it. From a psychology perspective, like that musical experience of like when you do hit the nail on the head with a performance and, fans are taken to that place we just mentioned. What do you think it is about music, about tension and release and just live music in general that can lead to such like ethereal feeling in the mind of the listener?
Without drugs and alcohol, I would imagine, hyperventilating, a breath of fire, I think that would work. It's really, seriously though, it's really a group conscious that these kind of festivals really sometimes get on. whether there's drugs or not, I would imagine that there are, this music is coming at a certain level and these certain kind of perfect state-of-the-art sonic sounds with the bass and the high end going far distances, the way the speakers are splayed and the perfect technology that's being used at, say, the Resonance Festival at all the stages. That kind of music can really get inside of folks and make them all kind of like one blob of love moving together and breathing together as an organism. That's the only answer, really.
Well, I can't wait to feel that. We're very close to that effervescent blob that's going to be at Marvin's Mountaintop.
Oh my God, what a historic site for a lot of old folks like me. A very historic site. Been there many times.
Keller, I'm going to pull a name out that you may or may not be familiar with. I'm a big fan of a guy named Seth Godin.
Yeah.
You guys are friends?
Yeah, we're friends. We've hung out once, emailed several times, talked on the phone a lot. But yeah, he is a marketing genius with amazing ideas and amazing packaging. The last thing I received from him was this the big book of ideas. I have it downstairs. It's huge. It's really, the packaging is amazing. But Seth Godin in the realm of marketing is someone to really respect and read and understand.
Totally. And yeah, for anyone out there listening, like Seth talks about like some of his phrases, like do work that matters for people who care. He puts on workshops for creatives, and he has this amazing podcast, amazing blog, and he's spoken about, Keller, your approach to art.
Nice.
And just the way you maintain this true magic that has been lost in a lot of art and things that are created that we see today. And he uses you as an example. He's referred to you as his friend on his blog. And my question, what's one thing that you think Seth's learned from you, and what's one thing that you think you've learned from Seth?
I've definitely learned not to expect a certain generation just to hear me, definitely a different side of the world or my world, definitely dialed into my scene without realizing. And I think that's a beautiful thing of Seth, to actually reach out into different realms of music that is not necessarily part of the marketing scene. I was definitely always below the mainstream radar, and for someone to dissect the way I do things and to kind of add philosophy into it, I really respect that. And that's one thing that I love about Seth, is how he's able to really get philosophical and dive into these types of things, and bring out really interesting aspects of what he's talking about, and using me and my career as an example is a great honor from such an amazing man.
Well, there you have it. This has been the Weird Music Podcast. I listened to Keller and to Seth, but Keller, my last question for you is, like, when you're going to be riding out to Resonance, like, what's some stuff on your Spotify playlist? Like, what are you listening to today? Some young guys, some older cats, different genres. Like, who are you listening to, Keller?
I have a playlist that's downloaded, and I call it Hippie Twerk. And it's definitely more of the acid jazz kind of old school trip hop type of thing, like more Chiba and Mr. Scruff. There's all kinds of folks like from the late 90s who were taking like jazz samples and creating these kind of trip lounge type of things around. I played the Resonate Festival that Casey put on in Florida, and got to hang out with Detox Unit. So when I'm like cruising through the airport and feeling kind of, aggro, I'll put on Detox Unit. And when I'm cruising through the airport and I'm feeling super like mellow, I'll put on Odessa. And let's see, when I am on the plane and I go to sleep, I'll put on the record Bright Size Life with Pat Metheny and Jaco Pastorius. And like usually the first couple licks, I'm just like, good night. And I wake up towards the end of the record. There's so many, as well as I'm really into comedy podcasts, and there's a whole list of inappropriate comedy podcasts that I enjoy, like when I drive and stuff, and trying to stay awake or whatnot. But yeah, and once we hang up, Cam, I'll think of all these other stuff that I've listened to in the past couple of weeks that I forgot about. But that's about the gist of it.
Well, hey, that hippie twerk playlist, feel free to make it public and send me a link for sure. I love me some acid jazz. I saw Detox Unit at summer camp.
Nice.
By the way, I would love for that Keller Squabby set to be somehow available on Bandcamp or something. Is it?
Yeah. No, I don't think anything's available. I definitely like to keep my shows kind of in the now, and to try and make people want to come out and see it, or to bring back the old school audience recordings. I'm from the Grateful Dead Fish world. That's kind of where I came up as a teenager, and it was totally normal to have like a whole several rows dedicated to microphones of people who wanted to hear the show immediately. But of course, it's not as good as Nugs or like even kind of any kind of board patch. But I'm trying to hold out as long as I can to release all the shows after the show, just to kind of keep that idea of live music and not allowing people to hear my blatant mistakes. So
I love it. Keller, I love your take on everything, man. I can't wait to see you here soon. Thanks for taking the time to do this. And yeah, definitely follow up with me with that hippie twerk playlist.
You got it.
All right. Thank you for listening. Shout out to the sponsor, SEM Tickets. We love y'all. We'll see you real soon.